Okay, thank you. Good afternoon and welcome to this meeting of the Charity Trustee Subcommittee. The meeting is open to the public, however, Appendices 3, 4, 8, 10 and 11 to the report at item 7 on the agenda are not available to the public or press because they contain exempt information related to financial and business affairs. So if members wish to discuss that information in the appendices, then we'll need to ask members of the public and the press to kindly leave that part of the meeting, and we'll pause the webcast. We have received 5 public questions and a petition. I understand you presented a petition today. Just in the rest of the housekeeping, can I request that all mobile telephones and other such equipment are switched to silent mode so as not to disturb the conduct of the meeting. There's no fire test planned for this afternoon. If there is emergency evacuation, then please take instruction from the Town Hall staff, and the assembly point is Tudor Square. For the benefit of the webcast, I'll ask each Charity Trustee Subcommittee member in turn to introduce themselves. So if you'd like to start, Richard.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Councillor Richard Williams, representing Stannington Ward.
Thanks. Yes, Douglas Johnson, representing City Ward.
Dawn.
Hello, I'm Councillor Dawn Dale, Councillor for Shire Green and Brightside and co-chair and lead member for Education, Children and Family Subcommittee.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Councillor Julie Growcup, member for Stocksbridge and Upper Don Ward.
I suppose I need to introduce myself. Councillor Bryan Lodge, member for Burley Ward, co-chair of Finance and chair of the Charity Trustee Subcommittee. If we'll just ask the officers.
Good afternoon, Chair and Committee. I'm Robert Parkin. I'm the Assistant Director for Legal and Governance and Deputy Monitoring Officer advising the committee today.
Hi, I'm Amanda Clayton, Democratic Services Officer, Clerk to this committee.
Craig Rogerson, Democratic Services.
We'll ask other officers as we come to the papers as you're presenting on there. Thank you. So item 2, apologies for absence. I think we're all here. So there's no apologies for absence. The exclusion of press and public, as previously said, appendices 3, 4, 8, 10 and 11 on item 7. So if we are asking questions on there, if we talk about the report in general, but if there are any questions about those appendices, then we will have to pause the webcast and ask people to leave on there. Are there any declarations of interest? Any members wish to declare an interest in any of the items of business on the agenda? No. Item 5 are the minutes of the meeting of the Charity Trustee Subcommittee on the 26th of January 2023. Can we approve those as a correct record? Thank you. So we move on now to public questions and petitions. Do we take the petition first? Yeah. I understand you have a petition to present. Is someone wanting to present and speak to the petition? Do you want to oh, see, do you want to step forward and sit at this microphone just at the desk just down here? He's hiding behind the screen there, we couldn't see you from here. I'm not sure if that one's turned on, is it?
Cheers. Just to be clear, I've got 2 sets of questions. One of them is about the activity hub, one is about the accounts. So I don't know how you want me to present those. And the questions about the activity hub, I'll talk about the petition, which is a public petition that we've had running now for 9 days, I think it is. So I don't know how you want me to proceed with that then.
We just want any information on the petition.
Right. If you want to address the petition first, if you want to talk to the petition, then we'll take the questions relating to the activity hub. Right. If that's better. If that's yeah. That's okay. Fine. In that case, I'll read through effectively. It's an introduction to the questions. So my name's Andy Chaplin, representing Friends of Hillsborough Park. We've outlined our concerns about aspects of the activity hub proposal
and the process that has been followed to date in the briefing note that we've already sent out to the committee, I think last week. If there's anything that needs any clarification, then we'd be happy to do that now. If anybody's got any questions. We've also sent out details of the online petition that we've tried to even-handedly set out our concerns with the scheme. And that's an online petition on change.org. There have been, I think it's now 1,020 signatures, and I think now it's 88 comments. Those comments have tended to coalesce around three issues, being insufficient regard for cycling for all, a poor offer to the other users of the mugger, and a general dislike of commercialising a public park. Again, if there are any questions about the petition, we'd be happy to answer those. So, based on our briefing and also on the comments of the petitioners, our questions to the committee are: 1. Is the committee comfortable in approving a scheme that will reduce access to the current free-to-use mugger, a space that is well used by Cycling for All and the casual users who play on it throughout the year? 2. Given the issues highlighted in our Friends of Hillsborough Park briefing, does the committee believe Hillsborough Park would be the optimal location for an activity hub? 3. Is there any evidence that a hub will provide an increase in physical activity? Or is it likely that a smaller mugger and more pay-to-use space will actually lead to less physical activity? 4. Does the committee have access to and have confidence in the financial viability of the scheme and believe it will produce in excess of 58,000 net per year, which I think is probably the figure to pay off the prudential loan and also to cover the sinking fund for all the courts in Sheffield? Is the committee content that the procurement process for a major development seems based on the proposal from a current supplier? 6. Is the committee satisfied that the report to the Cooperative Executive Committee was an accurate description of the situation and that it gave an opportunity for adequate scrutiny? 7. Is the committee satisfied that the consultation with the public in April 2022 and the conclusions drawn from the 2021 Hillsborough Forward Plan and the 2018 Better Parks consultation demonstrate a public requirement for a tennis hub? And finally, is the committee therefore confident that it can award a contract and any associated disposal of land which may be necessary and any consents or approvals required? In conclusion, we believe that we have demonstrated that there are significant doubts about this proposal. We have also shown that there is significant public opposition to reducing the size and use of the mugger. We would therefore ask the committee to send the proposal back to Parks and Countryside managers in order for them to completely rethink the plan and make it acceptable to the current users of the park and the public petitioners. Thank you.
Sorry. Quite a number of questions in there that hopefully as we go into the review of the report and asking the questions as officers, there's quite a detailed responses I've got from officers in here, but I suspect they will make up the bulk of the presentation that you'll be making in delivering the report, in proposing the report, or?
Yes, although there are some points where I've said that we're referring back to the questions and answers given. So
right.
If you're happy to,
I'm just conscious I don't want to sit here and read all this out to you, and then they sit and then I've just stolen the thunder to go through. But what I was going to suggest is if we go through and then we will get a written copy of these responses to you as well. And if there are things that we haven't answered, if we haven't dealt with the questions that you've raised in there within the discussion that goes on, then, you know, just give me a nod and we'll make sure we answer those for you and get those answers in here today. But I think it would be remiss of me to go through and just read everything out here when it's very dry reading it on there, whereas, you know, we can ask the questions and hopefully get a better response and get a better feeling for the answers to your questions on there. If that's all right with you. Yeah. Thank you. We have got other questions. We've got a question from Sheffield Cycling for All. Yeah, if you'd like to come along and ask your question.
Hi, thanks. So the first question, Sheffield Cycling for All would like to register our concern that the provider has not put forward a workable solution which will enable us to continue to offer our current level of activities and services. We're one of the UK's leading inclusive cycling hubs and the only one in the Sheffield region. We've been operating from the park for over 14 years and welcome 100 people every week to our cycling sessions for disabled people and people with long-term health conditions. Is the committee comfortable with approving a contract which will negatively impact the level and quality of service we are able to offer, as well as put us in conflict with other casual users of the mugger due to its much reduced size? And our second question. The report submitted to the Charity Trustee SubCommittee currently states that the provider must ensure the activity hub enables the services and operations offered by Cycling for All, which currently provides their main service offer from the existing multi-use games area space. Will the committee seek assurance that it is written into the contract that the provider is required to enable our current level of services and operations?
Thank you. Again, hopefully we'll get the answers as we go through and you know, as you listen to the conversation and discussion that goes on. But if we don't get that to you, then we will make sure that, you know, give us a nod and we'll make sure you get the answer today. For colleagues' benefit, I've just circulated the questions and answers, so you will all have a copy of them now. That it by email. Admittedly, it's not there in front of you now, but so you will have those, and hopefully we'll get the answer to members of the public here. There is a third question. I'm not sure if Andy's here. I can't see Andy Kershaw here. Right. If you want to answer the question, if you want to ask your question, they relate more to the accounts of the trust. Okay. Later on, yeah. So if you want to answer the question then.
Why is there no mention in either financial activity, income and expenditure, or actual work, maintenance or repairs to the Rose Garden Cafe building in the latest set of accounts submitted by the Charities Commission by Sheffield City Council as sole corporate trustee of Graves Park? 2. The council appears to regard the building as invisible in these accounts, and its duties and responsibilities to and for the building are omitted from any reference to the report. Question 3. Given 1 and 2 above, does the council accept that the Graves Park accounts and the report of the trustees are misleading and erroneous in this regard? Given that it is almost a 100-year-old building, should a reference to the council's role as trustee in relation to the Rose Garden Cafe be included in the accounts, since the animal farm and other buildings are mentioned? 5. Will the accounts and the annual report of the Sheffield City Council as sole corporate trustees of Graves Park now be amended to include its duties and responsibilities to and for the building be included in the accounts and its annual trustees report?
There is a further question there.
The third question, I thought I had read that out, but I will read it again if I haven't read it. Given 1 and 2 above...
Sorry, I've got another one here about what's the source of the items, page 247 in the public agenda pack. Is that not a question Andy's giving you to?
I have not got that question on here.
No worries. We'll make sure that Well, I'll read that one out then, as I'll give the response to your answer, to your questions there.
Okay.
And I'll read that question and the response in there
Right.
as well. Okay. Excuse me. Right, so in response to the questions you asked there, the cafe is run by a third-party operator. Only income from rent is included in the account shown on page 247 of the agenda pack. The cost of running the park is funded by Sheffield City Council. Annual revenue expenditure is generally greater than income, and any variance is borne by the council by way of a grant to the charity. The period covered by the accounts is the 1st of April 2021 to 31st of March 2022. So the building was closed in July 2022, so outside this accounting period. There is, however, a post-balance sheet event note on page 251 to acknowledge the situation and the net book value of the cafe building. Income from the Rose Garden Cafe is shown in the accounts. It is included in charitable activities. The costs of corporate repairs and maintenance are included within the costs of activities within the park's charities. There are parks operations costs. The Rose Garden Cafe element of spend is not split out separately. These answers will be captured in a written response to the questioner, together with any further background information necessary to explain the points. I should point out, actually, apologies, we've got Melvin Bailey from Rogers Spencer's Auditors that is with us on the screen. That's the auditor looking at the charitable trust in there as well. So I'm sure Mr. Bailey is also listening into the questions and the response we're giving there. The other question that I have from Andy just to ask is, what is the source of the items, page 247 on the public agenda pack, entitled Rents 153, 68, 109 and 377? Income from rent shown in Grace Park accounts is from the Ice Cream Partnership, from Rose Garden Cafe, from Sheffield Inclusion Centre, from rides, events such as Fairground and Race for Life, from service tenancies and the Old Schoolhouse. The increase in income from 2021 to 21-22 was largely due to rides and events after activities resumed post-COVID. We will get the written answer to Andy that gives all that information out there, and we'll share that with him. And if he has any further questions, I'm sure he'll come back and raise those. But if you are around when we have the discussion, then please stay around if you want to hear, and we'll cover those points in there as well. Sorry? All right. That one, yeah. Sorry, there was a second question from the Friends of Hillsborough Park. Why is the £420,000 of capital expenditure on paths in Hillsborough Park not included in the account? The capital expenditure on Hillsborough Paths totaled £436,131. Of this, £1,675 was incurred in 21-22 and is included in the restricted balance of £69,807 in the Statement of Financial Activities. Income and endowments from donations and legacies. The remaining £434,456 spend was incurred in 2022-23 and will therefore appear in next year's accounts. There's a question: is £33,500 the total tramlines fee, and if not, why does it not show in the charitable accounts? The amount of £33,500 is a 2021-22 site fee, the rent for the tramlines event. The income remains with the charity site to fund additional improvement works on footpaths and drainage. And the final part of the question: on what basis are some costs and expenses included from the charitable accounts, and is this acceptable practice for a registered charity? With the response that the accounts have been prepared in accordance with the requirements of the Statement of Recommended Practice, Accounting and Reporting by Charities, which provides that the Statement of Financial Activities should include all income, gains, expenditure and losses recognised for the reporting period 2021-22. So we'll move on now to the agenda item, and it's item 7, which is on page 13 of the agenda, the Parks, Tennis, Procurement and Hillsborough Activity Hub. And the presenting officer, Joe, if you just want to introduce yourself and Ruth and then present the report.
Yeah, I'll start if that's okay. I'm Ruth Bell, I'm Head of Parks and Countryside.
And I'm Jo Pearce, Service Manager for Business and Partnerships within Parks and Countryside.
So I'm going to speak to the report if that's okay. In April 22, Parks and Countryside sought approval from Cooperative Executive to do a number of things. I'm going to list those if that's all right. We sought approval to approve the proposed commissioning of a partner to further develop, manage and sustain the Parks tennis programme hub and spoke model. We sought approval to approve the proposed City Council funding contribution of up to £180,000 of prudential borrowing towards the development of the activity hub in Hillsborough Park, and the allocation of Section 106 funding of up to £183,000 for the development of the facilities within Hillsborough Park. The recommendations in the report were then that upon the conclusion of a procurement exercise, a further report would be brought back, which is now brought back to this committee, with recommendations on the award of the contract and any associated disposal of land which may be necessary and any consents or approvals required. The recommendations were unanimously approved by Cooperative Executive at that point. So I know that you've all had and of course read the report, which is extensive and has very, very detailed appendices, some of which are closed. And I'm not proposing that I go through the report line by line, but rather draw attention to the key points. So just to start us off, the recommendations of the report today are that the Charitable Trust Subcommittee note and endorse the contents of the report, approve the award of the contract to the preferred supplier, approve the use of the prudential borrowing and Section 106 monies to support the project, to authorise the giving of notices under the Local Government Act 1972 and the Charities Act 2011 prior to the disposal of any of the properties required for the delivery of the project, and also subject to the outcome of recommendation 4, to approve the grant of leases of the properties referred to in the body of the report to the preferred supplier on the terms set out in the appendices to the report, after consideration of the contents of the qualified surveyor's report and satisfying itself that the proposed terms are the best that can be reasonably obtained in the circumstances. So apologies, I know that that's really, really wordy, but I'll just talk through what's actually in the report, if that's okay. So the report provides detail of the operating and performance specification for the activity hub model, the hub and spokes tennis concession arrangements, which have been developed following significant consultation and ongoing stakeholder engagement. As part of the specification, the operator is asked to comply with the Council's pricing policy requirements, and I'd just like to draw everyone's attention to the fact that there is a requirement that the tennis courts in Concord Park are to be free to use at all times, and courts in High Hazels Park, Hollins End Park and Ecclesfield Park are to be free to use at specific times as determined by the Council. And those points are really important in order to ensure that in those parts of the city where access to free facilities is likely to be one of the key determinants around participation, that we're actually catering to those markets as well. And in addition to this, and really importantly, the MUGA, the multi-use games area in Hillsborough Park, is to be free to use at all times. So the tender process was conducted and a number of parties expressed an interest at that point, but only one of those potential bidders actually submitted a bid. So on that basis, we've worked with that one bidder through the negotiated procedure, and we're now recommending that the contract be awarded to that operator. Obviously, in the report and associated papers, there's significantly more detail about the process, the model and the operator. Some of that is in the closed appendices. As part of the process, Parks and Countryside have undertaken consultation over the last 2 years on things happening in Hillsborough Park, referencing this proposal. There was the consultation supporting the development of a forward plan for Hillsborough Park, which took place between April and September 2021, which included both an online survey and a virtual stakeholder session. There were 412 responses to this, and they identified key themes and local priorities for investment across the site. When they were asked about improving the tennis and mugger facilities within Hillsborough Park, respondents ranked the mugger and tennis facilities in 5th position, and the opportunity to try out new sports such as paddle tennis and things like that in 6th position. Of the 4 projects that were ranked more highly than developing the mugger and tennis facilities, 3 of those 4 have either been delivered or are in the process of being delivered, which obviously brings that need for recreational improvements and associated activities much closer to the top of the list of priorities. More recently, an online consultation was undertaken on the specific proposals for the Hillsborough Activity Hub at the request of the Friends of Hillsborough Park in April and May last year. That consultation received 607 responses. All of the details of that consultation are in one of the appendices of the report, but one of the key questions that was asked was, do you support the proposal of the Hillsborough Activity Hub project? And in response to that question, 67.87% of respondents said yes. And obviously it's important to say that 16.64% did say no. Regarding the spoke elements of the model, further specific consultation has been undertaken at the 2 sites that are currently being improved for the reprovision of tennis, so that's Hollins End and Ecclesfield. At Hollins End, full consultation was undertaken when the site master plan was developed, that was back in 2008, showing the refurbishment of the tennis courts as a key priority for that site. The Friends Group have been fully engaged with the delivery of the current refurbishment project. And then at Ecclesfield Park, there was a full improvements and priorities survey for the site, receiving 274 responses, with 204 of those respondents wishing to see tennis court reprovision and mugger improvements. And then for all of the outdoor tennis court sites that form part of the spoke model, the other sites, key site stakeholders have been informed about the proposed changes to the tennis management arrangements, and the impact of the proposed changes for these spokes is considered to be positive, as the arrangement will strengthen the coaching opportunities at these sites, and the sinking fund component will provide funding over the time period of the contract for infrastructure renewal investment. I do want to touch on Cycling for All. Obviously, one of the most important factors in moving ahead with the Hillsborough Hub model is that we want to be certain that the operation of key partners, such as Cycling for All, are supported. We have, I'm going to refer to the responses that we gave to the questions that I appreciate you'll be receiving in written format, if that's okay. Because we have been working both with Cycling for All and also with the proposed operator on what supporting them to continue to operate might look like. So Cycling for All are an extremely important delivery partner within Hillsborough Park, and we hope in the future in other parks in the city. And we've been in discussions throughout this about how their users can be accommodated within the space. Accommodation of their needs within the new footprint was included within the procurement specification as a mandatory requirement, and our expectation is that that would form part of the contract with the proposed supplier. So we are expecting it to be written into the contract as requested in the questions from Cycling for All, that supporting them to continue their activities at the level that they do them would form part of that contract. We've been talking to the operator and Cycling for All about how supporting them to continue to operate whilst other users are using the site might look. And ideas discussed so far include the Hillsborough Multi-Activity Hub to be as accessible as a destination as is possible for everyone, including those living with disability, potentially including gate entry points, removable equipment and toilet design. And on that matter, Cycling for All input into the design would be welcomed by everybody. Signage and information online to support with the awareness of when Cycling for All are on site, when they're on site every week in that mugger area, so that people going into that mugger area do know when it's going to be used by Cycling for All. I think we all recognise that the holiday periods are likely to be the key potential pinch points And so we're talking about options including using other spaces within the hub for some of those activities that might otherwise be done in the Mugger, not Cycling for All, allowing them to use the Mugger and facilitating use of other areas within the activity hub for other people that might be wanting to use the Mugger, perhaps for basketball and the like. We'd like to reduce any potential user conflicts when the Mugger's in use by Cycling for All by potentially providing for, and I need to read this out because I'll say it wrong otherwise, providing for basketball hoop shooting in other areas, either within the hub or outside of the Mugger and hub areas. There are also obviously a number of nearby grass areas which could provide kickabout options for with portable football goals available for free loan from the hub for anybody that's wanting to kick a ball about within the Mugger. Portable netball posts to be included within the tennis court area so that those areas are not solely usable for tennis, so that they can be used in other ways by other users. And we're still exploring options around low-level basketball hoops and things like that. We are looking at a booking option to see whether this would work to allow Cycling for All to reserve the area so that it's really clear that it's only for their use during those times. But those options are only being explored at this point, and we want to work with Cycling for All on what that might look like. The operator has talked to us about the potential for refreshments to be available for users and volunteers, with concessionary and discount options for people taking part in the Cycling for All activities. And also we have started very, very early conversations that we want to follow up with Disability Sheffield and Cycling for All about whether or not, in addition to operating out of Hillsborough Park, whether or not we can start exploring operating at other venues across Sheffield. We do want to make sure that the space enables as many groups as possible to work alongside each other, and we believe that the zoning off of creation of different activity spaces will enable that more. We're not going to say it's not a challenge. We don't want to dismiss this concern. We absolutely don't. But we are in the process of working this through. We're confident that we're committed to solving it, and that if we continue to talk, that everybody's going to be satisfied with the arrangements that we come up with. And one of the really important things there is that we and the operator will continue to review this. It's not a whatever's signed on the dotted line is the final point. Actually, we would need to check in with Cycling for All, see how it's working, and then review and tweak as required to make sure that everybody can operate on the site. Sorry, let me just go back to my notes. The other thing that I would say is that this is a really exciting, different and important scheme. We've been building this relationship with the LTA for several years now, and they're actually showcasing Sheffield as an exemplar for developing coaching in new communities, whereas traditionally coaching's only really been developed in more well-off areas. So the opportunity to do this in Sheffield is in these areas is one that we hope will be grabbed with both hands. Over the past decade, it's fair to say that the Parks and Countryside Service budget has been reduced significantly, along with many other council services. We've had a reduction by over half, but this has naturally come with a continued requirement and expectation that we continue to deliver good quality sites and good quality facilities. And the equation as it used to be doesn't add up anymore, so we're looking at different ways of delivering this service with mixed funding models and sometimes external partners, which is what we've got here. The Parks Tennis Hub and Spoke model is an initiative that provides one of the answers to the challenge of delivering and sustaining high quality outdoor recreational facilities for the people of Sheffield, following year-on-year budget cuts and resource cuts. And then I guess the only thing that I would say further to that is, Chair, I don't know if you want me to read out any of the answers to Mr Chaplin's questions, or whether you just want to send them in writing. There are some points in there that might reassure Mr Chaplin, might be further information that the committee feels is useful as they go forward into their conversations.
I think it probably would be helpful. I think some of the as the questions are worded, and as you read them out, and it's asking, does the committee have confidence, does the committee have access, and things such as that. The responses are as the response. We are the committee, and you'll gather from the conversation that takes place and the questions that are asked whether the committee has confidence but as you'll appreciate, the answers that are written down are sort of written in terms to answer the questions that were put. So I think it will be helpful probably if you want to go through those.
Of course, yeah. So, because some of this I didn't want to cover twice because I didn't want you to have to hear exactly the same information. So, and Mr. Chaplin, I'm just going to respond to your questions. I'll read your questions out and then the response, if that's all right. So, is the committee comfortable in approving a scheme which will reduce access to the current free-to-use mugger, which is currently well used by Cycling for All and the casual users who play on it throughout the year? So the changes to the mugger area aren't about losing free space, but about reconfiguration of the space to enable a wider range of people and groups to engage in sport and recreational activity. A dedicated mugger space that meets Sport England design guidance is being proposed. And further to this, there will be other informal spaces that enable a range of concurrent activities, including, for example, basketball and tennis. To make the park a welcoming and active space for all ages and abilities, we know from previous evidence such as Sport England's 10 Principles of Active Design and the University of Sheffield's Improving Wellness Through Urban Nature project that a number of key ingredients are required. That includes refreshments and toilets, a range of sport and recreational facilities that attract a wide range of users, a good quality green space and a range of community and sports groups, or to use the way that we often describe it in Sheffield, a brew, a loo and something to do. The focus of the capital investment within the activity hub proposal will be in the provision of recreational facilities that encourage people and groups to do repeat visits in order to increase their physical activity levels and improve their health and well-being. Quality welfare facilities are required to enable duration of visits to be extended, and investment in parks infrastructure is needed to accommodate an increase in user numbers. And I mentioned how important Cycling for All are to us and the park and the city, and there's just a point on our continued discussions with them, which I won't go over again, if that's okay. Question number 2, given the issues highlighted in the Friends of Hillsborough Park briefing, does this committee believe Hillsborough Park would be the optimal location for an activity hub? So as outlined in the Co-op Exec report from April 2022, Hillsborough Park was identified as suitable for a number of reasons. So the park already has a sports area, and this sports area needs reinvestment due to deteriorating conditions of the tennis and mugger provision. The provision of an exciting and high quality facility of this nature will raise the standard of the park and increase its attractiveness as a destination, supporting the green flag aspirations that we all have for that park. The location provides a mixed demographic and potential reach to an important audience of people that we should be working harder to engage, including those on lower incomes. And currently provision for this type of activity is lacking in the north of Sheffield. So not only would this be a unique project for the whole of the city, but it would also be addressing a need for this specific area. The park itself is a city destination site with very good transportation and access links. And there are a range of complementary developments that are currently progressing within the park, including the coach house, the all-wheels tracks, the pathway improvements we've recently done, library developments, and past and hopefully future playground improvements. And as with the current tennis courts, some facilities would be paid for use, such as the paddle tennis. Question number 3, is there evidence that there will be an increase in physical activity, or is there the likelihood that a smaller mugger and more pay-to-use space will lead to less activity? So the current mugger and tennis court facility within Hillsborough Park is not considered to be in good condition. This area of the park, with the exception of the new pump track, is frankly tired and in need of renewal in order to improve and sustain good quality sports and recreation facilities for people of all ages and abilities. The mugger area does not currently meet Sport England guidelines for such facilities and is not conducive to the playing of competitive games, both five-a-side football or basketball. And we know from experience and research that improvement to the quality of spaces will increase attendance and therefore physical activity levels to a wider range of people. The current facilities provide access for certain groups who are able to play informally within the space, and the introduction of an increased informal and formal offer of activities with a range of managed spaces will enable more audiences to access physical activity opportunities. And there's a wealth of emerging evidence through Sport England and more locally the National Centre for Sport and Exercise Medicines that sport alone is not a hook for everyone to be active. There are many barriers to being physically active, and the quality of facilities, access to toilets and welfare facilities, along with cost and knowledge of services, are significant. And this project seeks to address and minimise those barriers so more target groups can be active. The Friends of Hillsborough Park have highlighted a point regarding fencing, which does need to be carefully considered within the designs, and it is a key consideration about this is around making space for girls. However, to provide a balanced perspective, the other key elements from this research show the importance of lighting, site presence, toilets, as well as the creation of smaller spaces which avoid male groups dominating. The multi-activity hub would provide that. And then also, I touched upon this briefly earlier, but the consultation undertaken in early 2022 on the specific activity hub proposal included a question regarding how the introduction of an activity hub would impact on park users' usage of Hillsborough Park, and over half of respondents, that was 52.72%, said that they would use the park more than they currently do. I've got a smaller answer now, so sorry, because I know you're hearing me talk quite a lot. Does the committee have access to and have confidence in the financial viability of the scheme? Is there more scrutiny of projects after the experience of the Fargate container scheme? Sorry. Do you want to read out the revised version? Apologies. Don't worry.
Right, sorry. Does the committee have access to and have confidence in the financial viability of the scheme and believe it will produce in excess of 58,000 net per year?
Apologies, my answer is to your old question, so I'll answer this and then I'll speak to Joe if that's okay. So financial due diligence, sorry, I struggled to say that, has been carried out, and obviously within the report that is being presented here today, the financial summary sets out some of that information. The business model and viability of this proposal is set out in the report that we're presenting today. I do appreciate that in your briefing, Mr Chaplin, you also asked a number of further financial questions, some of which are regarding information that was in the closed appendices, so apologies about that. I think the information about the income is in the closed appendix, if that's...
We've provided it to...
But we have provided it to the committee, so they do have that information in going into whether or not they're going to make the decision. So question 5, is the committee content that a procurement process for a major development is based on the proposal from a current supplier? And you'll recall that when I introduced the item, I talked about how at a certain point we only got one bid, so from that point we were only working with a single operator. So the decisions taken within Co-op Exec in April 2022 set out that the proposal was developed in partnership with a range of national partners, including the LTA, the Lawn Tennis Association, the current operator, and also Sport England, and it's part of the wider parks tennis strategy that the LTA are working towards nationally. We did consider a different range of options to progress this idea because the existing operator was 5 years into a 10-year agreement, and we asked questions about whether or not this proposal could simply be developed as part of their existing arrangement, but the nature and scale of the proposal means that having an open and transparent procurement route was the appropriate mechanism for this. So following approval from Co-op Exec back in April 2022, officers have progressed that. Is the committee satisfied that the report to the Co-op Exec Committee was an accurate description of the situation and that it gave an opportunity for adequate scrutiny? So members past and present, including those members who took the decision to proceed with the procurement of the hub model, were briefed throughout the development of the proposal. A project team have worked on this, including finance, legal and procurement colleagues, ensuring that the process is followed properly and that financial scrutiny and due diligence has been carried out throughout, and the report and associated documentation were scrutinised and understood by Co-op Executive before they took that decision back in April 2022. Is the committee next question. Is the committee satisfied that the consultation with the public in April 2022 and the conclusions drawn from the Hillsborough Forward Plan and the 2018 Better Parks consultation? I touched on some of this in my introduction. Consultation has formed a key part of the proposal, and this has been happening in various stages for the last 2 years. The Forward Plan consultation informed the need for improvements to the recreational facilities in the park. At that stage, the consultation didn't go into details around specific for this proposal, as that wasn't what it was designed to do, and the proposal wasn't as developed at that point. At the point that a decision was requested from the Co-op exec, conversation with the Friends of Hillsborough Park identified a request for more specific consultation, and working with the Friends of Hillsborough Park, we all recognised that their view was not necessarily representative of all the families and the wider audiences, and that they would prefer to see us do a consultation on the specific proposal before the procurement started to seek public opinion. We carried that out. There were 607 responses. It was an online survey. In response to the question, do you support the proposal of the Activity Hub project, 67.87% said yes and 16.64% said no. In response to the question, do you think you would make use of the Hillsborough Activity Hub, 58.15% said yes and 18.29% said no. And finally, in response to the question, how would an activity hub like this impact on your usage of Hillsborough Park? 52.72% said they thought they would use the park more than they currently do. 27.02% said they would use the park about the same amount as they currently do. And 9.72% said they thought they would use the park less than they currently do. Is the committee, question number 8, is the committee therefore confident that it can award a contract and any associated disposal of land which may be necessary and any consents or approvals required? Yes, due diligence has been undertaken on the project throughout. Oh, sorry, sure.
Thank you. That's probably the longest introduction to a report that I've ever heard. No problem. It's quite, I mean, the questions that were asked, and I think it's right that you read the answers out, so the questions are in there. But there were the questions around cycling for all that they submitted as well. You're going to cover those, you're giving Ruth's voice the rest.
Yeah, I was just wanting to just respond to Andy and colleagues from Cycling for All, just to I guess say that it's, you know, we've been having conversations for quite a long time, and it's genuinely been difficult. That's probably fair enough this week following that petition and seeing a lot of those comments, because the narrative around that's felt difficult, and it's felt that it's been about officers blindly being quite happy to displace disabled users or other people within a setting, and I just wanted to provide another view to that, to say that that's very much not the case. You know, there are officers here who genuinely want to listen and are hearing that, and there are some things we probably will never see eye to eye on, but I think there are some things, specifically the Cycling for All challenge, and I don't mean the group as a challenge, but the fact that we want to do something here that accommodates a really important group, but we also want to do something that can enable more use of a space. I previously had, you know, about 20 years within Activity Sheffield, physical activity at the heart, not about elite sport, not about anything, but about trying to do what we can to get people to be more active. And we know the challenge around that. We know we're still facing a challenge of inactivity. We've got to work harder to engage key groups within society. And we also know we're facing a challenge around austerity, and we have kind of decline in parks, green spaces and countryside. So we were looking at this genuinely in the round to try and find a solution that could accommodate a really important group, but could also provide the sustainable model for this site and others in the city, and that's something that could engage a young mums group. It's something that could engage an older people's group. I think back to Bait and Miners Welfare, and I used to play table tennis with Ernie at 93, and that's really important. But we're also at Pittsmore Adventure Playground, where, you know, a space for young people is really important. And as the group that we're talking about here, so I think it's just trying to present the fact that this is really about a solution to engage as many people and different important groups as we can. The feelings and the conversations we're having with Cycling for All, and clearly you've got supporters here, and I absolutely get that, and thank you for coming along. And we are absolutely committed to trying to make that work, and I know it's not felt easy, but for what it's worth, we are genuinely committed to doing that.
And sorry, Chair, do you mind if I just add one last thing? Because I appreciate that I talked through the different ways in which we might manage the conflict on the site, but I didn't specifically answer your second question. So if you don't mind me just formally answering that. So the question number 2 that Cycling for All asked was, the report submitted to the Charity Trustee Subcommittee currently states that the provider must ensure the activity hub enables the services and operations offered by Cycling for All, which currently provides their main service offer from the existing Mugger space. Will the committee seek assurance that it is written into the contract that... Sorry, my computer literally just decided it was going to move on to a lock screen then. Will the committee seek assurance that it is written into the contract that the provider is required to enable our current level of services and operations? And the answer to that question is that, as you stated, the requirement that the provider ensure the activity hub enables the services and operations offered by Cycling for All, which currently provides their main service offer from the existing Mugger space, was written into the procurement requirements and the specification, and it is an expectation of the council that this form part of the contract. So we do expect that to be part of the contract. It is something that we want to take forward within the contract so that Cycling for All know that they're being supported.
Thank you. I hope that's answered your question. It's not really a time now. It's the time for members to ask the questions, and I'm sure if you want to clarify things afterwards, we'll see if there's time. But it's now time for the members to ask the questions. I am conscious that there are two colleagues who were members of the Corp Exec last year, when the report was presented, and they took that decision. And I know Councillor Johnson, it was Councillor Teal who led on this. I don't know if you want to add anything in there, and Councillor Grocott, if you want to add anything.
Yeah, I mean, it's probably time to bring that in. I've got a copy of the report somewhere. So this came to the Cooperative Executive, formerly known as Cabinet, last year in April, wasn't it, I think? So about this time, short before the elections, a bit of a wash-up thing. But the decision there was effectively the arrangement to go out to a procurement exercise. We didn't have any of the detail of that there. We did have the outline of concerns raised by I think both the Friends of the Park group and Cycling for All, so it's on the register then, because I think we did ask questions about that, and we had some assurances that that those concerns will be taken into account, because obviously we recognise, certainly Cycling for All is an absolutely unique project, and there was concern right across the board on the cooperative executive that was wanted, and so yeah, we did get assurances that that would be taken account, and it will be worked up so that negotiations, I think, will be taken forward. That's best my recollection there. We could check the decision record in the minutes. There might have a bit more detail on that. But it is fair to say that flagged up. And I'm just going to say now, I would have expected that to have been wrapped up and brought to us for presentation by now. So I'm just saying that because I think we need to know why that's not been achieved yet. Am I missing anything from there, do you think?
Councillor Grocott.
No, I think that's a fair and accurate reflection of the meeting. Obviously, I would call this an in-principle decision that we're going to go out and look at how we make this work, and that we would expect as members to get back lots of information and data that would allow us to make a safe decision in relation to how we move that forward. And I don't feel that that is the information that we have before us today. And I would just like to thank all the people who've come along today, and it was extremely helpful to receive whoever put the papers together and sent them to us. Thank you for doing that. I think that was extremely helpful to have that. And certainly, I went away and had a conversation with Councillor Linda Hammond, who's one of the local ward councillors, just to get his view on, you know, where we are, where we were with all of this. And it has raised a number of significant questions and concerns for me that I can either ask now or whenever you feel is appropriate, Chair.
Okay, well, yeah, thank you. Thank you both. I am going to go on to questions. One thing I should make clear is that we had a number of representations that came into people. I had some come to me. I think Councillor Williams, you had some come to you. What I did do for the benefit of the public out there, I did circulate those to everybody. So anything that came into me or came into Councillor Williams, we did circulate. So all members of the committee got all those representations. So everybody got the same information that was in there as well. So I'll open it up to questions. I've got Councillor Grocott, you've indicated first.
Thank you, Chair. A number of significant things for me, and I think starting off, a starting point for me would be, it would have been really nice to have gone and had a site visit as members of this committee. I don't know whether, and Councillor Williams can tell us later, whether the Communities, Parks and Leisure Policy Committee got there eventually, whether they went out and had one or not. But I think certainly, from my perspective, it would be nice to go and have a look at the site and see how it's been allocated, because I think there's some important points there. I've not heard anything about any audit being done of the users of the mugger, so that we know how many people use it, what days of the week they use it, when they use it. I've not seen any information about that, which I think is really important. I think some specific consultation with Cycle for All would have been useful, just to get their views. I think the questions where we've asked the people, the questions about, would you use it? The bit that was missing off the question from me is if the size of it is significantly reduced. We've not asked that question. So, of course, people are going to say, yes, we will use a new improved mugger, but what we've not said is the size of it will be significantly reduced. And I think that would significantly alter the questions that we would get from people in terms of accessibility. I don't know, because I haven't been out and I haven't seen it, and it would be really helpful, I think, to be able to do that. I think calling it an improvement when actually it's a reduction in its size, I don't think is quite an accurate reflection. I wouldn't say that, the surface may be better, there may be more lines, pictures, whatever on it, but if the size is constrained, then how does that impact on the number of users that we can use? Yes, we've heard we may be able to use it for different things, but actually, are we, encouraging other people to use it, but taking away the people from what it's been used for historically? And I'm not too sure that we've captured that information accurately or not. I don't know how the system works at the moment for using, getting access to the mugger. We've talked about going forward, it's going to be a booking system. Is that what we do now? I don't know the answer to that. Is that something that people are happy wanting to do, to undertake? Is that how they want to use, to use the system? We've got some very nice drawings on the back of the report about, what it will look like. Are these set in tablets of stone? Is this it or nothing? Or can we, go away and start having some conversations?
Some of those items are restricted. So just before you.
All right, okay, sorry. So, but I think we need to understand about what we can and we can't do with the space. I think is really really important. So I will come back to that again at some point then, Chair. But I just think at this moment in time, there are too many questions. I could be here for a long time asking questions on the report at the moment. I think there are too many questions and not enough answers for us to be able to actually make a decision today. I think what we are trying to achieve is really good, it's really positive, but I just don't think that we've thought it through carefully enough. And whether that's, you know, about member involvement, I don't know how much member involvement there's been from Parks and Countryside, from the local area committees, sorry, Richard, I keep calling you Parks and Countryside, from communities, Parks and Leisure, from the local area committee, from ward members. I don't know how much involvement there has been from the local, you know, the local community groups. So I think there is still some work that we need to do to get this to a place where we can all be really happy that we've got something that we can shout from the rooftops about that is a great scheme. It should be a great scheme, and I'm sure it will be, but I think there is quite a bit of work to do there, and I don't feel as a member that I've got all the answers I require at the moment. Thank you, Chair.
I think there was a question in there somewhere. I've got Councillor Dale's indicated. If you want to take those and then answer, and then we'll go. Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. I am an advocate for the use of green spaces, for those that know me, but I am also an advocate for young people and those that are economically disadvantaged. And I would be doing a disservice to young people if I didn't raise my concerns about this report. So, first of all, I've got a list of questions. So, how was the initial consultation carried out in February 2021? And of the 412 respondents, what was the demographic and how many of those 412 respondents were young people? Of the 607 people consulted on Citizen Space, just over 2% of those were young people under the age of 24. So what I'd like to know is, have you liaised with Sheffield City Council's youth engagement team and captured youth voice as part of this piece of work? And of the target audience, specifically young girls, how many young women and girls have been engaged in this consultation? Again, you talk about stakeholders, but there is no mention of young people having a stake in this space, in this report, effectively enough as being consulted with and engaged with. You talk as well in the report about improving outcomes. I can't see how this model reduces inequality and enables access to those worse off if it's a charging service for some of it, but only some of it is for free. If we're reducing the amount of access for free activity, it's not clear enough to me how that is going to make people who are economically disadvantaged feel welcome in a space. And also, when Councillor Grocott mentioned this, I'd be interested to find out what research has been done regarding the reduction in size of the mugger and whether it will still be fit for purpose. And on page 29, we talk about social return and the piece of work that Sheffield Hallam University has done. I would want more information around how they've come to those figures. You know, how are we measuring the social return on community development? How are we measuring it on personal well-being? And how are we measuring it on health outcomes? Thank you.
Thank you. Do you want to respond to those two sets of questions?
Yeah, thank you. So to start with Councillor Grocott's questions, from a site visit perspective, yeah, noted from the charity trustee, obviously we've arranged a number of briefings for the committee members. From a Parks Community Leisure Committee perspective, that was flagged, and we did arrange a site visit and briefings, and for local councillors as well who were attended that. From a audit perspective, which I think covers off a couple of Councillor Dale's questions as well, in terms of kind of the consultation that was carried out, specifically young people, youth engagement, an audit of usage, and specifically the questions asked around the representation from the citizen space. And the forward plan consultation, which was a broader consultation for the site, yeah, you're right, that was kind of done more on a broader sense through citizen space, which is not the most effective platform for engaging young people. and then the more specific consultation that was carried out last year was also on citizen space. There has been anecdotal, but anecdotal feedback captured through officers on site, and also this is something that's been informed by design, research-led design principles from people who are experts or professionals in designing spaces to engage young people, whether that is Sport England through the Community Asset Fund, whether that is with the Lawn Tennis Association, and also Courtside, our partner, and that has been used to inform the space and thinking around the design features. From the question around Cycling for All consultation, sorry, Councillor Grocott, could you repeat that question? There was a specific question.
It was just around, have we done an audit of when Cycle for All use it, so we know how often they use it, the numbers, what their views are on the reduced size?
Yeah, so we've had a number of conversations with colleagues within Cycling for All, and we know the pinch points would be the holiday periods, kind of in the week, Monday to Thursday. The space is used, but not as often as in the holiday periods. And also, I think a key part of their concerns, and quite understandably, is not necessarily the accommodation of them. Actually, they could be accommodated on a reduced sized multi-use games area. Actually, what happens when a group of young people want to rock up and play on that as well? Where do the other people go? Where do other users kind of enjoy that space? And that's what we've been kind of working through. So portable basketball hoops or portable football goals in other spaces within the courtyard, table tennis activities. There was an approach previously through the Half Healthy Holidays programme around space for free holiday provision. So that would be something we would be keen to see accommodate within the tennis court area. And the reduction in multi-use games area, the question about would it be fit for purpose, that is to be designed, and that was within the specification around within Sport England guidelines. So the spec that was drawn up is very much in line with that, but yes, it is a reduction in the existing space. And I think that was the main feature. And I guess the main one, and it depends how the look at it, this kind of loss and reduction. And of course, at the minute there is a large space of tarmac that is well used by Cycling for All and by other people informally on that space. There will continue to be a large space, but configured in a different way, and we believe would enable a whole different range of audiences and groups to be able to use that space. However, clearly it's changed, and that's got to be managed, and we can't say now, right, this is how it would work. And so the suggestion of a booking process, that wasn't something necessarily we'd suggest. I think it came through one of the on-site briefings we were talking about with a number of users, and actually not bookable from a kind of, right, this is it, because that we do know that would be massively difficult for some people just want to rock up and play football, but actually for some people that might work well. So that was a solution kind of discussed, but no answers necessarily agreed on, because I think we would need to see how that would go. So I would say that from a formal consultation perspective, yes, the citizen space, and I think that could be seen as a little bit narrow in scope, but I think the ongoing conversations we've been having on this for a long time have brought a whole seam of information out that we have used together with our national partners. And we can think, oh well, that's kind of, it's research that stuff, but it's research like the Make Space for Girls is research from young people with a voice who fed into that. So yeah, I'll pause there.
If I could just come in, because one of the things that was raised around was around moving the multi-use games area to be a bookable space. Just to be really clear that when we mentioned that, it was solely in reference to whether or not that was a way of enabling Cycling for All to be clear that when they wanted and needed to use the site, they had access to it. That's not something we're proposing outside of that. We're not reducing free access to the site. We're reducing the footprint of the current mugger, the concrete space, and making it what we believe is a more fit for purpose mugger, multi-use games area, still free to use with other activity space and the tennis areas next to it. So we're not proposing that it becomes a booked area taking away people's access to it beyond how it is now.
Thank you. Councillor Johnson, you indicated.
Yeah, well, thanks. I mean, first of all, just endorse all of Councillor Grocott's questions, because I think all yours were on my list too. There's some really fundamental ones there. I hadn't clocked all Councillor Dale's, because that's an area of knowledge. But I mean, just whilst we're on the topic of, you know, youth engagement, I mean, do you know we've got a youth engagement team? I mean, I think they've been doing drop-ins for us. I mean, they have, you know, they have their networks right into a lot of young people who are really interested in talking about getting their views across. So I'm just thinking ahead. I mean, can we get a commitment from you to actually go and talk to them before we can bring a proposal back? Because we really need to find that out. I think the word, so yeah, I was looking for, see if we can get a commitment from that. The Councillor Grocott right picks up on the audit of data of who uses the site now. And I think the difficulty is because it's open access, there isn't a clocking in and clocking out mechanism, so it's much harder. But we actually do need that. And I think we're looking for baseline data, aren't we? So one of the other ward councillors just sent me a picture this morning of, you know, the site in use. Actually looks pretty full to me, you know, at the moment. You know, so we need to know how much it's being used now, so that we can make any decision on it. So I think we need that bringing it back too. And what I really want to just look at first of all is just where we are with the status of all these closed documents. So, so there's almost like a record number of closed appendices. That means that I've seen them, but people over there haven't seen them, and that makes it difficult for people to ask legitimate questions. It also makes it difficult for us to, you know, make a decision based on things that we haven't had those soundings on. Where are we with these? I mean, so looking at, first of all, the visuals. We said that. There's a list of the appendices on page 14. Appendix, where is it? Where's the visuals? Yeah, Appendix 3, the courtside design CAD visuals closed to the public. So, now I'm not going to say anything about them, but what's the status of those? I'm asking this because I asked the office to check out yesterday with courtside what's preventing them being made public. Because frankly, if we could all see some pictures of what's proposed, it would just be a hell of a lot easier for all of us, frankly. Did we get any response from them? I'll let you answer that.
We did. We spoke to the potential operator, and they responded that this is their intellectual property. Obviously, if this doesn't go ahead, a potential competitor could get hold of it and use it. This is property that they own, and they've asked that it be kept confidential.
Okay, I wasn't expecting that answer. Seriously.
Right, Joe.
Sorry, I was just wanting to add, but go back to your earlier point, was around the youth involvement, and what was referenced in the report was also the leisure strategy consultation, which was significantly carried out last year. There's reference to it in the report, which did engage the youth involvement team, who were Children's Voices previously. So something that came out quite clearly was the recognition for doorstep community facilities, spaces in parks and green spaces. So I think it was just to kind of highlight there was, that was used in the thinking around this as well. But to go back to the point around appendices, you say an exhaustive list there, but actually there's a list of, we have gone through a procurement process as agreed last April. We have we have worked, you know, this is an existing partner, there's no elephant in the room there. We've gone through a procurement process quite rightly, and the existing partner has been chosen as our preferred bidder. At the operator and also at the council's kind of risk here, there is a lot of money being spent on the drawing up of legal documentation, quite appropriately, you know, significant amount of legal fees spent to do that. The operator, who were running an already successful operation, has spent a lot of money pulling together something that's still at risk until it's approved and signed off. So I think it's quite fair that they've asked that that is you know, those visuals, we're still awaiting approval for this. So at the minute, we've shared visuals throughout the procurement process that the council's drawn up, but in terms of sharing the visuals from a courtside perspective, this isn't a agreed process at the minute, so it wouldn't be appropriate to do that. And I think that's very fair.
Thank you. I think, Robert, you wanted to comment about.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. It's yes. So as the officer said, so this is a procurement process in flight. We haven't yet made a decision. The council hasn't yet made a decision. That's what's proposed today. Whether or not that decision is taken today is another point. But the relevant law, so the public contract regulations, expressly require a contracting authority to not disclose information designated as confidential. The officers explained, I think, the rationale behind that rule, but it I think, provides the background to why the designation of exemption from publication was applied to those documents which carry that intellectual property. Chair.
Right, so
Thank you.
can I go back? No, sorry, I was a bit surprised at that because it looks to me like they're visuals of the sort that they perhaps ought to be promoting. But it perhaps leads on to the question of, on those visuals then, it just makes it very difficult for us. So, I mean, it's also fair to say, I mean, I've been asking for just a site plan of what there is now and what's proposed. It would be really helpful to have that in the report. The visuals might be a substitute, but it is difficult because actually I need to really get some views from people who know what the place is like. I mean, I'm not that familiar with Hillsborough Park, you know, but people are, and yeah, they're important stakeholders, like you say. It just leads on to the question of, well, actually, what sort of business are we dealing with here if they're not willing to do that? Now, I can understand that they've got every entitlement to say, this is our intellectual property, we don't want it to be disclosed, and that if that happens, then as a council shouldn't do that.
If I can, because I think you've had the guidance there. We need to be careful that we're not straying into things here, because issues around that, you know, that would be subject to post-contract award, and if they're looking at visuals and publishing those as part of planning applications and things. But at the moment, we need to be careful that we're not straying into and questioning that, because, as is explained, as part of the procurement process, they have every right to retain that as their intellectual property. So I think just be, if we're not straying to that, please.
I mean, note the legal advice. Yeah, you probably, I mean, I'm questioning what's going on here. But I just want to sort of draw out the fact that it's not just that. I mean, you know, you're saying it's an organisation that it's not just that it was the only company that wanted to put the bid in. It's a company that's been working with you on this project since 2017 in your report. You know, so it's not quite like, you know, an impartial bidder putting something forward. I was kind of hoping that they would just be a bit more cooperative in saying this, so we could come forward there. And yeah, sorry, you want to give an answer, don't you? And then I'll come back to the youth involvement stuff.
Yes, I would just give an answer that, you know, we have been working with Courtside for 5 years, and I just think the kind of questioning of anything there, they've been a really successful partner. We've had a good relationship. We've seen an absolute, you know, rise in tennis participation throughout the city, in sites across the city. We have seen investment as a result of a really positive relationship. So I just think that's important that we don't kind of, you know, consider it in that lens. I think that looking at what we have tried to share and be as transparent as we could, we drew up visuals, and we said it right from the start, you're quite right, Douglas, and we put it in the report that was taken to Co-op Exec, obviously that you were there, that the incumbent have been involved in that concept of a hub and a spoke. There's nothing to be secretive around that. We have the spokes at the minute. What we're trying to do is grow that model, make it not a tennis alone model, make it something that reaches more and is more sustainable for a longer period of time and provides a more sustainable business model into the future. So that wasn't something we've been secretive about. The things that are down there is closed. There are a QSR report, the confidential legal documentation that's been drawn up that would not be appropriate to send. So I don't think there's anything untoward that's been led entirely by legal. I think what we've provided, we've tried to provide as much as we possibly can.
All right, okay, said that. It would be helpful if we could get, even if not those visuals, some pictures, some site plans, so we can see more clearly what's going on. Just because this proposal seems to be just really muddled, to be honest. I'm just struggling to get my head around either what's been decided and can't possibly be changed at this stage after 5 years, and what's still up in the air, and yet is all down to, you know, ongoing discussions. It would just be nice if we could get to the end of that point before this rather unusual committee has to come and make a formal decision on disposing of it for a longer period. Just going back to the, and I don't know if you want to come in on the youth involvement stuff. You said some, I think, relevant stuff there, Joe, about, you said the youth involvement team was involved in something and it was in the report. Is this in the report? Is this, can you refer to
it
this
in the full report, yeah.
Which page would it be?
The leisure consultation that was carried out last year, I will check the page.
Could we just have a look at that? Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Just coming back on that, while I appreciate that as a city we did a leisure strategy, in this report we're talking about stakeholders in Hillsborough Park. What I'm asking is how many local young people and young people that use Hillsborough Park have been engaged in this consultation. So while we do lots of citywide strategies and lots of citywide consultation, as a city we are looking at devolving decision making into communities through our local area committees. So I appreciate what you're saying, but I don't see anywhere in here how many women and young girls that live in Hillsborough have been engaged in this piece of work, and how many of the young people that use the park or that live in Hillsborough have been engaged with to have a say as a stakeholder, because they are citizens of Sheffield and they have a right to have a say in the use of their green space.
So, yeah, the leisure strategy was done at a LAC level as well. So the consultation was carried out, but yes, it wasn't specific to this proposal, clearly, but it was something that highlighted locally that doorstep community facilities, this nature of a proposal would be something that would be supported. From a women and girls perspective, there is a kind of a strong female response to the 600 and however many, 600 and something consultation that was carried out. There were female, but yes, the youth point, specifically to Hillsborough, yeah, noted.
So, do we have a page? Is it in the report? Am I meant to be looking at something on a particular page? Do you know which page we're looking at?
It's one of the appendix, isn't it?
I've tried to find it, but... Oh, page 12, right, okay.
Just to pick up a chair.
Page 12? No, page, if we look at the big numbers, would that be page 24?
3.3, the Sheffield Sport and Leisure
3.3.
Strategy consultation. Shall I read it out? It talks about
Right, I think we've got it here.
appetite for investment in facilities and services which support the delivery of sport and physical activity, a desire for additional investment in outdoor activity spaces which provide opportunities for low-cost activities on the doorstep, recognition that indoor and outdoor spaces should be places that people want to visit for multiple reasons. Investment should support the development of facilities as activity hubs by creating spaces which are multi-purpose destinations in their own right.
So, sorry, Joe, I'll stop you there. I'm just going to say, there's no mention that young people are acknowledged in there, is there?
Well, we can provide a further briefing around how the sport and leisure strategy was carried out, and we know that young people, that was carried out through the LACs areas. It was a citywide consultation, and I've not got the full report because it wouldn't be appropriate to put the full report in here, but that can be something circulated.
Yeah, I mean, I wonder if there needs to be some work on this, doesn't
If it
there?
helps, Appendix 9 is the insights into the consultation that talks about different sports and people and things that people are using.
I couldn't find anything there about the youth involvement team either. I mean, so, but it does need to be addressed, doesn't it? So maybe we can bring that back.
Yeah.
Yeah, Joe.
Just a couple of other points I don't think we've come back on yet was regarding the visuals and the plans and kind of the designs of these are set in stone. They're not set in stone. As I said, the operator, and there was a question earlier around kind of why have we not been talking in detail with Cycling for All sooner. We, officers in parts of countryside, have been talking to Cycling for All for a period of time. However, in terms of detailed discussions, we weren't able to do that, obviously, until the conclusion of a procurement process. So that has been happening, because it wouldn't have been appropriate because they were how we've been working through. We have started those conversations in the last few weeks in concluding the procurement, and now we're bringing this decision here. So that's why that has been only done in the last kind of 4-week period. The plans, in terms of the final designs, nothing would be, we had written to the procurement spec that in advance of planning, further conversations were had with key stakeholders, specifically Cycling for All. So that was always discussed and specified within the procurement process. And just to go back to a previous point around the multi-use games area and a reduction in that through the consultation, there was a visual included in that which demonstrated the size of the multi-use games area and a reconfiguration of the space. And it's in your the briefing note that Andy provided and our response to that that you will have seen. There was a visual drawn up of that, changing use of space and incorporating different activities within the space.
Sorry, have we got that now? Can we look at it? Right, where am I going to find it?
Sorry.
This is the paperwork that's provided to you in response to the briefing. I guess we've said that you've got it, but actually I don't know how widely that's been shared.
What?
That looks right.
It's entitled Officer Responses to the Friends of Hillsborough Park and Cycling for All Briefing Questions. It's 7 pages.
Is it this one that you're talking about? There was a part
Yes.
that was
Yeah, that's
included as part of the
Yes,
consultation that went out.
yeah.
So is that included in the consultation appendix? I'm not sure if it's included in the.
We'll just check.
Just while you're looking for that, page 178 of the main report in Appendix 9 has got the demographics that talks about age ranges and talks about ethnicity of the respondents in there.
Is page 147 what you're looking at, Brian?
Pardon?
Is page 147 what you're looking at?
No, it's in the 178 of the reports pack.
Yeah.
In the consultation. This was a graphic that was included.
Try to find it.
That was included within the consultation that went out. The visual that's provided as part of the FAQs within the consultation.
Yeah.
If you want to, well, you've got that there in front of you, I think there, Douglas, haven't you?
Yeah. So what? Is that it?
That's the key thing. It's showing the mugger there.
Okay.
Tennis courts there, open space, virtually without revealing anything.
Page 147.
Yeah.
Not dissimilar to what might be happening.
Yeah. So 147. Yeah. Okay. We need a better plan than that, I think. Yeah. Right. Okay. Yeah. Okay. So we need to have a look at that. All right. Sorry, not sure where we are with questions now.
Have you finished your questions, or have you?
I mean, I've got loads more, but
Well, if we can, because I'm conscious of time and people are sitting around and they're waiting for the other items on the agenda as well.
That's right. Yeah. Are we coming any closer to deciding what we're doing with this?
Well, we're asking questions. I know we're asking questions of the officers of the report, because I've also got Councillor Williams that wants to answer, and Councillor Dale that wants to come back.
Shall let the people have go first?
Have you got any more questions? If you want to ask your questions, if you want to make a comment after, that's fine. But if you want to ask your question,
okay, yeah, all right. No, I'll do that. Yeah, okay. So I mean, really, my next question is, with the proposals, what's actually being done to allay the concerns that have been laid out fairly clearly, both by Cycling for All and the Friends of Hillsborough Park. I mean, I'm aware that you have been trying to have conversations with Cycling for All, but what's actually being done? And also ask, how long will it take to conclude that, do you think?
I wouldn't want to say, because I would say that was a conversation to have together with Cycling for All. We'd had some constructive conversations last week. I think we've been chatting over email about a few bits that we're not quite therewith. So I don't think it'd be appropriate for me just to say, oh, it'll take a week, because I would want to chat to Rosemary and co.
But just to say that obviously in responding to their questions, I set out some of the things that we're proposing as ways of responding to their concerns. So we are proposing a number of things to make sure that everybody can be accommodated in the ways they need to be accommodated.
Okay, I mean, that's useful, and I can understand that sort of cautious approach to that answer. I'm really just thinking about, you know, when this committee can have those answers back so that we can make a decision. Yeah, I mean, I think it's fairly clear that we can't make a decision on this today, so it's when it could be, and then in future, of course, when this meeting could be accommodated.
Okay, yeah, thank you. I guess from our perspective, we had written into the specification, and we'd had conversations about the fact that in advance of plans being submitted at planning subject to approval, we would have involved Cycling for All in that continued discussion and design. I feel like we're close. I wouldn't like to put a time frame on it, but I feel like we're close. So I had hoped we would be able to get to a decision so that we can actually continue to have that conversation. Otherwise, we are at risk of losing funding. Sport England are investing into this, as are the Lawn Tennis Association and a successful community interest company. Therefore, there is a risk to the funding if we continue to delay something that we've been working on for a number of years. Yeah, I would add that.
Okay, so on the funding, I mean, most of the funding is coming in from the council, isn't it? Right, okay. We've got all the finances are closed too, aren't they? Not to you. Oh, well, not to me, obviously. But before I ask any questions, and
Can I see, if you've got any questions about the open report, that we can take all those. If there are, after that, you've still got questions about the closed aspects, we'll have to pause the webcast, ask members of the public to leave, and then we can ask the questions there.
let's
Just to come in, because on the finance points, we've been really open and transparent with Friends of Group. We've talked about the funding. The funding streams are not closed. That's included in the report. There is 183 Section 106 money. There is 180,000 prudential borrowing from the council towards this. That is the council's contribution. The rest of the 1.3 million investment is coming from public and private investment. 250,000 from the Lawn Tennis Association, 150,000 from the Community Asset Fund, Sport England. The Key Fund locally, I think it's 150,000, and then the remainder is been provided by Courtside CIC. So the contribution by Sheffield City Council is around 13%, and that's not closed.
That's helpful. I think most of that information was in the closed bit, but okay, if we can be open about that, it would be helpful. Yeah, that's good. Right, okay. I'll come back to any of the financial stuff later on. So the issue, I mean, the big issue here is the equalities one about displacing Cycling for All. You know, to the extent, I mean, obviously I appreciate your argument is it's not been completely displaced, but to some extent.
Just to be clear, we're not proposing to displace Cycling for All at all. We plan to accommodate them, and the things that we're working through is how any conflict between users is handled. That's not about Cycling for All not having access to the space that will be there the times that they have the space now. It's not about displacing Cycling for All.
Can I be clear about this? Because I thought that's why we're having this long discussion, principally, that Cycling for All will have access, but they'll have access to a significantly smaller space than they do at present, and that it will be time limited, and thirdly, that it will be, there'll be a lot of people in that pool fighting for that bit of space, if you like, potentially.
The space will be smaller. Cycling for All don't currently use the whole of the mugger, and that's where we recognise that there could be conflict, because same number of people, smaller space, there could be conflict, but they will not be time restricted. They will not be told that they can't use it, and we've been really clear about this from the start. They will be supported to be in that space using it as they do now, to continue their activities. And what we've been talking about is how we accommodate the other users outside of that space to ensure that Cycling for All can continue the great work that they do.
But didn't we say that they won't be able to use it in the school holidays?
No, we said that that's when there might be more conflict, because during the average school day, most children are in school, most not all, and obviously they're the other key users of the muggers. During school holidays, you can anticipate that there would be more children within the park during the school day, during the times that Cycling for All are using it. We are not saying that they cannot use it during that time, and what we're trying to work through is how we accommodate them to use the space and continue their activities alongside other people having access to space in whatever way that they want to use it.
So saying that Cycling for All will be restricted in space, but won't be restricted in time at all?
It will be restricted in space only in the sense that the mugger will be smaller. They don't currently use the whole of the mugger, and actually they may use the whole of the mugger in the new area. But what they won't be told is, you can only use a third of the space, you can only use half of the space. That's not what is being proposed. They will have access to the mugger.
Okay, yeah, and the whole of it, yeah. And unrestricted in time, so 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, yeah.
I mean, yes, I don't think they're
Not saying they're
proposing
going
that
to do
they'll use it
that,
at midnight on a Tuesday, but the times that they use it currently are the times that we would suggest they would be using it going forward. They might want to talk to us about different times, different parks and things like that, and we'd be looking at that. But yeah, if you were using it 9 to 12, we wouldn't be saying, oh, it's only 9 to 11:30. If they're using it at 9 to 12 now, it's 9 to 12 going forward.
Okay, and is that written into the draft agreement?
So in the this was the bit that I said verbally, so apologies you haven't seen this written down.
Yeah.
But in the question that Cycling for All asked, which was, it was written into, Cycling for All stated it's written in the report that you guys have read today, that they need to be accommodated, and they were asking for assurance it would form part of the contract. It did form part of the procurement strategy, that they need to be accommodated and that they use the mugger. And sorry, my computer's just gone to sleep, so I can't read it out exactly. Yes. And our commitment was we expect that to be part of the contract going forward. Yes, we expect it to be part of the contract going forward. We plan to put it in the contract going forward.
Okay, I mean, we maybe need to see that draft contract, don't we, once it's had some involvement in there.
It is, it's part of the closed document.
Yeah.
It's in all the appendices of the report that was circulated.
See, in there I've seen different versions of similar text, which it wasn't, I might need to look those up and see. So it's, yeah. Not sure how you can take those people in to go from the gallery that possibly don't have a formal role.
It is questions for members, yeah. I'm afraid. It is, I know it's going on, but...
Yeah.
I mean, the point I would say in response to that is if your activities increase, we would want to find a way of supporting it. We're looking to have at least the same wording in the contract going forward, yeah, which is around supporting the activities that you undertake in Hillsborough Park.
So, yeah, so on one of the documents, so I think on the procurement, it originally said, I've got the note here, it's understood the activity hub development will impact on Cycling for All's current operations, and this will need to be negotiated and agreed between all parties. But the question is really, why is that being dropped from the reports that's being presented to us now? Okay.
In the procurement strategy, we stated to potential bidders that one of the requirements was that they support Cycling for All in access to the mugger and therefore associated displacement of other people. That was in the procurement strategy, and in the closed section, which is the wording for the contract, it's referred to in there.
Okay, but it's been dropped from when it's reported to us today. So there's a reason for taking that out.
There's no reason for taking anything out. I think there is 400 pages of work there. There is Cycling for All have been sewn in the procurement process, the specification throughout. The conversations continue, and we are, the word impact, you know, there will be an impact on their operation because they currently get 30 trikes out of a container and set them up on a space that is going to reduce in size. There is absolute recognition of that. Of course, it's going to be impacted. Through the conversations we've had, those 30 trikes can be accommodated onto a reduced size multi-use games area. The wider concern and the thing that we need to work through is, well, what happens when in the holiday period a group of young lads want to come down or young girls want to come down and use the space, and that's the solutions we're working on. The Cycling for All users can continue to use on that space as well as other spaces in the park. There's been a lot of work going on at Hillsborough Park, including widening paths. There's the all-wheels part, which I know doesn't accommodate some of the bikes, but in terms of the learn to ride area, there are other spaces in the park, and we've started, you know, we were having a very brief conversation about other park sites. So I think the fact that there is nothing missing, you know, the information is very much there, that we are absolutely committed to accommodating, and it was written in to be mandated to the operator to work with Cycling for All.
Can I just clarify, Councillor Johnson, you're saying it's in a report and it's not in a report. That gets a little bit confusing for members of the public, because if it's in the papers in the pack that we have there, it's in the report. So I think it's a little bit confusing, could be perhaps considered misleading to say that it's not in the report now, because if it's in the papers that you're referring to there, it is in the report pack that we've been provided.
Well, it's in twice in different versions. That's the thing. So in the report, so it's page 19's section 122, the second bullet point down. So this is the one that says that the concession project scope includes ensure that the activity hub enables the services and operations offered by Cycling for All, which currently provides their main service offer from the existing multi-use games area space. Okay, and that's obviously taken from the text that's set out on page 35, which is in the, yeah, it's an open book. That's the part of the procurement spec, where there's an extra section in there, which is the line I read out, you know, where there's recognition, if you like, that the proposal will impact on Cycling for All, and there's a need for negotiation agreement, you know, and that's fine. I mean, it's just they'll be looking to see where this negotiation agreement's got to, given that it's acknowledged that there will be an impact. So
I think
there's a discrepancy. There's
I think
text
the officers,
missing there.
I think you've made the point,
Yeah.
Councillor Johnson, and the officers have responded. I am conscious of time. If there are other questions you want to ask, if you want to ask those questions, because I have got other members and there is other
Well, I'll bring
business.
this to an end. I mean, I think it's just that, you know, it's like work in progress, could be really positive, but it's not there yet. And I just want to know, when are we going to get an actual final proposal that we can actually make a coherent decision on? But I'll park that and let you bring others in.
I think the report is the final proposal that the officers have put into us. The decision of the committee will be made on the recommendations, but the proposal is the report. It's not, correct me if I'm wrong, but it's not turning around and saying, well, there's another report that's going to come on the back of this. If this is the report with the recommendation to the committee, the specifics about the layout and things, which is what you were talking to, alluded to, the graphics thing, that will be subject to a planning application, which will be then open to further public scrutiny, and that will be out in the public domain because it has to be as part of the planned application. Is that correct?
Yeah, just to be really clear, we're not bringing this as a briefing, we're bringing this with recommendations that they're appointed as the supplier of this.
Yeah, we just need to be really clear that if we're being asked to make a decision, we have to have it based on a coherent plan that's written down, and that's just, you know, what we've been asking questions about, because it's not there yet. There's just too many variables, and if we're talking about entering into a 25-year contract, you know, it's not a little light thing to do. We need to be sure that that's right.
And I think that's the purpose of the questioning, that we're asking the questions around the report to help us arrive at a decision based on the recommendations that are there. Have you finished your question? Yeah. Thank you. Councillor Williams.
I've completely forgotten what I was going to ask. Sorry, it's been that long. No, seriously though, I mean, my first question slightly flippant, but what exactly did the cooperative executive last April approve? Because unanimously, because I'm getting the impression it was oh, we'd like to do something in Hillsborough. Okay, go and do it. And I can't believe it was that at all. There must have been a bit more detail than that. So here we are. This is a lot of hard work that's gone through. It came to Communities, Parks and Leisure Policy Committee for information, because it's not our decision. That sits here. And what we did, we set up a meeting on site with members of the Friends of Hillsborough Park, the gentleman whose name I forget from Cycling for All. I recognise you, it's good to see you again. We invited local members to come along and chat. Hi, Henry. And we had a very good discussion, and some very positive changes came out of that discussion on site in the middle of the summer. The first being that the mugger was going to be free 24/7, even though it's not going to be open 24/7. But it will still, when it's not being used, it's still free. And now we're moving on, and as far as I'm concerned, we have options here. It is clear that what we're being put forward is a significant improvement on what is there now. It's different, but I think it's an improvement. I know everybody's not going to agree to that, and I have full respect for people to make comments. I have full respect for what the Friends of Hillsborough Park particularly do in that park. And thank you for the work you do, because we can't afford to do it, but you guys do a lot. We've just got to basically, we've got to get off the fence here. We do run the risk of losing the funding, but that doesn't mean we have to make bad decisions. A lot of work, as I said, has been done by the officers, local councillors particularly, and it's just time for us to get moving on this. On a point of clarification, on page 147, that little graphic, that went out with the consultation. Yeah, so that means that the people who responded to that consultation were fully aware that the mugger was going to be significantly reduced in size.
If you'd like me to respond on that, we did have comments as well as people just saying yes or no or answering our questions. And the comments that we received, some comments were in reference to the smaller size of the mugger. So we are clear that it was seen and understood by those people responding to that consultation. And sorry, Councillor Williams, I don't know. The very first thing that you said was what was approved at that cooperative. I'm happy to read out what was approved, but I don't know whether that would actually be useful. It was the wordy bit that I said at the very start of my briefing. That was specifically what was approved at Co-op Exec around approve the proposed commissioning of a partner to further develop, manage and sustain the park's tennis hub and spoke model, etc., etc. I can read it out if you want, but I don't know whether that's specifically what you were asking.
Well, it kind of was, but you just read it out to me. Yeah, okay. If you look at what this could be against what it is currently, it's a significant improvement, notwithstanding some issues. The key issue to me, with all due respect to local residents, is the work that the Cycling for All does. And I know the officers have spent an awful lot of time in dialogue. You're not going to get the same. It will be different. Doesn't mean it's better. Doesn't mean it's necessarily worse. But I think at least it won't be worse, but it will be different. And that's a reflection of the excellent work you do. And I think what I take comfort from is in the document, it does talk about things will be reviewed. And I think that's a vital phrase, because we don't want to go down the track and you feel that you've been, I have to choose my words very carefully, you didn't end up with what you thought you eventually got agreed on. So that's important. It's blindingly obvious to me the way this is going this evening, which I think is a shame. A lot of work has been done. We run a risk. Personally, I think there's enough there to take this to the next stage. That's just my opinion. Thank you.
Thank you. I've got Councillor Dale indicating he wants to come back. Okay, Councillor Grocott.
Thank you, Chair. A number of things for me. I would like to discuss the proposed design, so I'm sorry, but we need to do that in closed session if you're saying that they're restricted. I think there is something significant that we need to understand on those that I don't at this moment in time. I think that there is an awful lot of good work going on, and we are almost, I don't think we're too far away from where we need to be. But when we've got a petition that is signed by 1,000 people in just over a week, then we know that we have got a community that is actually not very happy with what we're doing, and because of the new way that, you know, our new way of governance that we have all accepted, that we are working with our communities now, we are listening to them, we are taking on board what they are saying. I think it would be, in my personal opinion, it would be wrong of us to do this today without actually going back and saying, you know, to everybody who sat behind us and other people in Hillsborough, let's just get this to a position where you are comfortable with it, so that we are putting forward a recommendation that everyone is signed up to, because I don't feel that we are at this moment in time, and for the sake of a little bit more work, I think we can get it to that place so that we are all comfortable, the residents and the friends groups and the users of the park can have had a genuine input into what is happening, not just have been paid lip service. We've listened to them, we've conversed with them, we're saying, you know, we agree these recommendations today, and they are then hoping that we are going to come up with something that suits them, because this work has still got to be done. That's what you're saying to us, that we've still got to do this work. So why can't we do this work and then formalise it, you know, 4 members as a council, so that everyone is happy and understands where we are, and we're not in a position where people are wondering, is this bit going to get done, is that bit going to get done, where is this all going to end up? That's my fear at the end of the day. I've got confidence that we will get to the right place. You know, this is a really good proposal for Hillsborough, for the city. I think it's something that we can all get behind. But I just think it's probably come to us a few weeks too soon in terms of finalising what needs to be done with all the interested parties, so that they are absolutely confident in what we are doing. And if we, as a council, are serious about working with our local communities, then this is our opportunity to show that. This is our opportunity to show that as a council we have changed our way of working, that we do listen to people, and we do want to get it right. And from what I'm hearing from officers, they are confident that we're not far away and that we can put that work in and we can do it. So for me, we should do it. But I do have, I'm afraid, a couple of questions that would be helpful anyway about the plans. Sorry, Chair.
Just if you're happy for me to respond on that, just to be really clear that the ask here is to award a contract, it's not on the design, so a number of those things can be addressed through the planning process and through consultation around planning. We're not asking for approval of the specific designs. If there's changes that need to be made there, that can be made through the next stages if a contract is awarded.
Just for clarity, the indicative layout against the original and the existing and potential that was included in the consultation, that is on the indicative. Is that what you're saying? And as I understand it, it would be subject to full planning application, which is then open to public scrutiny. So, Councillor Grocott, are you wanting to go? You want us to go into closed session to go and ask the questions?
I just think this gets more complicated and confusing by the minute, actually. You know, because we've got, you know, friends group, users groups who have some genuine concerns, who have gone out of their way to raise them with us, and, you know, 2 hours in to a meeting, are we now saying that actually all of these concerns can be sorted out at a planning stage, and so I'm just wondering what we've spent the last couple of hours doing.
Would it be helpful to look at somebody's proposal, and it's asking the officers to defer a decision on this, to sort of answer those questions, and regarding the closed financial reports in a briefing session for members of the committee, is it possible to defer this if we want to clarify some of these things and look through?
I mean, I think that's perhaps a legal question. Are we able to defer the decision? The thing that we would need to say is that there may be risks to the funding. We would need to speak to those partners about what a delay would mean to them and their funding.
And just to ask, or come in as well, I guess it's understanding, Chair, what those questions are that are outstanding, because we've said there would be ongoing conversations with Cycling for All specifically in advance of a planning application to work through the designs, work through the detail of the kind of other users in the space. How do we best accommodate that? So what are the outstanding questions that would mean we would want to defer? Well, I guess it's not we, but you would want to defer.
Okay, Robert.
Thank you, Chair. So the committee can propose and second and resolve to defer the item and invite the officers to come back. Officers are not clear today on the implications of a deferral in terms of funding, but perhaps would highlight now if there was a desperate urgency for a decision today. So perhaps if there was a deferral, it would give an opportunity for officers to look at that, understand all the points to make, and liaise with the chair about the need and timing of a meeting to decide upon this. But as a matter of process, it is open to the committee to propose and resolve to defer an item.
Councillor Johnson.
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, there's 5 of us on the committee, and we're the ones who are responsible for making the decision. And I mean, I want to second what Councillor Grocott has said, just because, I mean, you know, we've had 2 hours of questions, and I'm hoping you were taking notes on that, because, you know, we're asking questions for serious reasons. You know, we you know, no one can afford to, you know, force improvements on a park when actually we're getting a lot of the park users saying these are not the improvements we want. You know, it's an impossible situation for councillors to be placed in, really. So I'll second the deferral, and then probably the timing of when it comes back will depend on, I mean, there'll be discussions to be had about, you know, when you can fit in and when the committee can be scheduled. So, but also tied in very much, it's an incentive, if you like, to try and get some resolution to some of these things that are definitely outstanding, but, you know, and obviously have been discussed for quite some time, well over a year, but hopefully can be resolved in the relatively near future. I'd really like to see them resolved, but we can't do it today, so I'll second a deferral, certainly.
Sorry, did someone propose it? I was asking a question, I didn't propose it. Joe.
Robert's point around the risk. There is a risk specifically to the Sport England funding, the Community Asset Fund, which is kind of way beyond the point of being there. So the real risk to that funding still being there, which is £150,000, which, you know, could change the model. And I guess it's just being clear here from officers' perspective that for 12 months, or well, for 2 years prior to that, but for 12 months we've been working on the decision from April, the Corp Exec, to do something that has spent a lot of officer time, a lot of legal time. So I guess in terms of resolving Friends of Group concerns about actually fundamentally doing this, that's, or actually we're talking about the solution to address kind of cycling for all, and I appreciate that's included within Friends of Group's concerns, but to address those points, because actually we've gone through the do we or don't we, and it's just being really clear on what is outstanding, because there's a risk that actually those things can be worked through in advance of planning that doesn't put the funding at risk, and we could continue as recommended by us on the paper.
Thank you. Councillor Grocott.
The first recommendation says note and endorse the contents of the report. The questions that Mr Chaplin asked were about the reduced size of the mugger. The report talks about the reduced size of the mugger, and then now we've been told that that's stuff that we can work out through planning. So If we're endorsing the report, we are saying that we are reducing the size of the mugger by virtue of the fact that that's what the report says. So then how do we, so we are then at a situation where this goes to planning, where we will be told that members of this committee agree that we're reducing the size of the mugger, when I've not had the information about the use of the mugger to be able to say that that is something that I am satisfied that I want to do right now.
Actually, I'll just make the point, if I may. Given that I was on the cooperative executive last year, and we noted from the report then there were concerns raised, and we were given assurance by us that it would all be sorted out in due course. But we are here a year later, and they're still not sorted out. So I think we absolutely would be right about saying they can't be sorted out in planning because this is a firm proposal that would constrain so many things now. So, you know, there's no way you can really agree to this today. Sorry.
I'm conscious that we have the recommendation in front of this. There's not been an amendment tabled, although Douglas said he'd support it. I'm conscious we go to the recommendations and it gets defeated. That's just the feeling I get in here. With all the work and things that have gone in, would a deferral of this to give members the opportunity to get a better understanding and look at things, to brief the committee so we can then talk about the closed elements of the report, is that a way? But we would have to have the commitment from members of the committee that we have to do that in a reasonably short time frame to then get through. And I'm not sure what's the requirement if we need to get another committee meeting in to do that.
Well, partly was why I asked the officers before how long they'd need just to get the discussions with Cycling for All and whoever over the line. And you know, don't want to put them aside. Quite rightly, they've answered that they can't answer that now. But I guess that's the reality of deciding when this could come back.
I'm also conscious we're hitting the pre-election publicity period, or whatever it's called. Started at the end of this week. So, Robert, I'm not sure what the situation is with regards to that.
Well, it certainly adds another layer to matters. We know that the pre-election period brings forward a number of what are sort of continually standing points, which are not to publish any material which appears to have designed to affect support for a particular political party. So any meeting would need to be justified as genuinely urgent, and it would be needed to be very carefully managed so that it didn't become a platform for electioneering. So there's a balance there to make, and there's, you know, clearly that forms part of our thoughts when it comes to deferring this item now. But yeah, it's not impossible to bring bring matters forward, but there needs to be very careful management of that. In a post-decision publicity, in a pre-decision publicity fashion, but also in terms of the management of the meeting.
Sure.
The sport, I think we need to get clarity from a funding perspective on what the implications would be. So we can, the CAF Community Asset Fund was intention to spend from the 31st of March. So we need to seek clarity from Sport England, the Lawn Tennis Association, and Courtside and Key Fund on what the implications of a deferral would be.
I'm just conscious, I'm just getting the feeling that if I go to the recommendations, we take a vote, it's likely to be not approved, and the recommendations, and then it would go. I'm conscious of the amount of work and effort that's gone into it, and you know, I consider it to be a great proposal in there. Personally, I think it is a good proposal, and I just want to make sure that we're not going to just go and reject it outright. If there's a way forward to look at this and we say, can we defer making the decision? But then we would have to have the commitment from members of the committee that we can get together to have the briefings so we can discuss what we need to discuss and ask the questions that we need to ask to then get the committee together, and we'll have to be measured and calm and you know, conscious of the rules if we're going to make this decision. but it might be if there's a deferral, you get the clarification on the funding that means it can be left until after the election period. Councillor Groker.
Thank you, Chair. I think we all want the same thing here. I think we just need some reassurances that in our new ways of working that we are doing the right thing by our communities. You know, it's the first we're hearing that there's a deadline on the funding of the 31st of March. So that's, you know, that's we've got 10 days. I don't know how much work we can get done in 10 days in terms of getting this turned around, but certainly the new committee system allows us to have urgency meetings. I think we're obviously going to struggle to get it in before PERP, but I think you've only got to look at the conduct of members in this meeting this afternoon. That, you know, there's not been any issues as far as I could make out. We're all wanting to do, you know, the right thing for the park in Hillsborough. But I think we have to be confident as the people who are making the decisions, because this meeting started off right at the very first comment from officers this afternoon was reminding members of the decisions they'd made 12 months ago. So that tells members that members have got to get things right, doesn't it? So I think, you know, we need to be careful. We all want this to happen. We all want this to work. But I just think we need to make sure that we're doing it in a way that, you know, we as members have set out is the way we want our council to operate now.
Just to say that if you agree to a deferral, obviously we'll go away and do the work that's necessary. We'll get the information on timescales, and we'll get further information that you've requested.
Thank you. Sorry, Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, we always sit in these meetings, whether it's full council, and talk about the fact that regardless of party politics, we're all in it for the city. And I think that's a valid point. And I think it would be a crying shame if, and it is, yes, it's in Hillsborough Park, but it is a city-wide project. There are hubs everywhere. Hillsborough Park itself is a city park. A load of people from all over the city do come to Hillsborough Park every weekend. And it would be a shame if they miss out because we, as members, and there's only 5 of us, can't be grown up enough not to turn it into a political bandstand. So I think let's get it done as soon as we can. If we don't have to do it before PERP, then that's fine. But if we run the risk of losing funds, then that would be a crying shame.
Thank you. Councillor Johnson.
Yeah, so I don't think anyone said that there was an actual limit on the funds there. If there were, that should certainly have been in the report. Everyone knows that any funder like the council, with any project, there's always slippage. It's a routine thing. It's not that, I'll be very surprised, put it that way, if any funder was suddenly going to say, right, we'll take this off the table for some reason that was completely unknown to us now. So if it were, then then that is something we'd have to balance up against the wishes of park users. But those issues are clearly still outstanding.
Joe.
Yeah, the Community Asset Fund actually closed from Sport England. This was a solicited application linked to that, so the fund specifically closed, but Sport England have recognised that it's a good project, it fits with their outcomes around active environments. They were keen to see it delivered, so it is kind of, we've gone into the slippage period, so 31st of March is kind of end date, but they have worked with us on this. They want to see it happen, so I've mentioned that in briefings. I believe it's written somewhere, but it has been talked about again transparently that and it's public. Sport England's CAF fund has shut, so that's the point around that.
Thank you. I think we've, unless Councillor Dale wants to say something, I think everybody's expressed. So I will move it then. I will move a recommendation that we defer this to allow officers to look and get that information and check whether the funding is possible. You have to work on your hoof to get this down in writing. But I think to defer it, to give members the opportunity, we can have a briefing where we can ask the questions around the closed reports openly without worrying about straying into things, and if the officers can clarify, it's fine to leave it till after the election, then so be it. But if we do need an urgency, we can look at doing that. But if we do have to have an urgent meeting prior to the election, then we will have to deal with it just on the basis of what we're looking at in there. We've got to be respectful of the regulations, everything there. Would someone like to second that? Thank you. So on that recommendation, on the, amendment to the recommendations, is everybody in favour? Is anybody against? To defer it? Yeah, the amendment to the recommendations that defers it. Is everybody in agreement with that? Anybody against? Or any abstentions? Thank you. Thank you. Interesting conversation, interesting discussion. I hope we answered the questions that were put by the Cycle for All and the members of the Hillsborough, Friends of Hillsborough Park. I am reminded now that we have 20 minutes left to go through the charitable report, the accounts. So thank you very much. You are welcome to stay. Yeah, I'd be surprised if you do. We have the opportunity to extend by 30 minutes if we feel it's appropriate. Do we want to? No. No, they've got a stopwatch going here. So if we move on to item 8, page 221 of the agenda, and it's not Jenny, it's Jane. Jane, do you want to take us through? I'm conscious that Melvin's been sat there listening to all this there, and we've kept you waiting. I hope it's worthwhile you waiting till the end here. If you do feel, if there are any questions you feel you want to, please raise your hand and we'll bring you in. Jane.
Thank you, Chair. I'm Jane Wilby, Head of Accounting. So the paper that you've got is to present the 2021-22 accounts as part of Sheffield City Council's responsibilities as the sole trustee of each of the charities acting through the charity subcommittee. These are for Graves Park, Hillsborough Park, Norfolk Park, Weston Park, Perth Park, Encliffe Park, Richmond Park, High Hazels and City Hall Gardens. So thanks to the finance officers, Janine and Maddie, that's diligently prepared the accounts, which have been subject to a thorough independent examination review by the external auditor, Roger Spencer. So thank you to Melvin, who's dialed in today. The accounts have been prepared in accordance with the requirements of the Statement of Recommended Practice for Accounting Reporting by Charities, which provides a statement of financial activities, which should include all income, gains, expenditure and losses recognised for the reporting period 21-22. The auditors have completed their independent examination and confirmed that there are no matters to bring to the trustees' attention to enable a proper understanding of the financial statements to be reached. Full details of the report signed by Roger Spencer can be found within each set of the accounts. So it is recommended that the charity subcommittee notes the 21-22 charity accounts and the outcome of the external auditor's independent examination, and that the charity subcommittee approves the charity accounts, and the chair of the charity subcommittee will sign the statement of accounts, trustees report and letter of management representations. And the financial statements and accompanying reports are attached to be signed to conclude the independent audit examination. Thank you. If anybody's got any questions, happy to take those, and obviously Melvin's on the line as well. He'd be happy to answer anything that you do have. Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody, any questions? Councillor Dale.
Just one, Chair, with regards to the names of the charity subcommittee members, that's recently changed, and you've still got Councillor Rooney on as the member, and he's no longer a member on this committee. So I don't know if that's relevant for submitting the accounts or not.
Robert, I'm going to look to you to advise.
it should be a correct record if we're submitting them, I would say, through you, Chair.
Okay, and can we can amend that before we sign the documents, and that's because that's it. That goes in the report that's signed, and is that in the part that we sign off? So we can amend that.
Apologies. I think it will mean that we'll have to amend all of the documentation that's attached before you can sign. But if that's the only change to the accounts and documents, yeah, we can recommend that change, and we can get a new set of documents for the chair to sign on behalf of the committee. So we can have the approval today if that's agreed.
Okay, you do realise the trouble you're causing now, Councillor Dale coming on instead of Councillor Rooney. Any other questions or any other comments? It's actually for members. It's actually for members. I think, you know, we have the auditors of the letter that the auditors have assessed them and considered them to be correct.
It's not the finances, it's the commentary. It's not correct, so I can't see you able to change it.
Thank you. Okay, so with the recommendations, with the additional recommendation that it's delegated to me to approve the change of the name of Councillor Rooney to Councillor Dale, can we agree the recommendations? Is everybody in agreement? Yeah. Thank you. I think that's the last item of business. Thank you, Melvin, for sitting there so patiently through there. Fantastic contribution. Listen, if we have to do it quite often as councillors, you can do it as well occasionally. So thank you very much for today. Thank you for your attendance. Thank you for coming along and presenting your asking the questions and things in there. And I'm sure we can make sure that the commentary is correct going forward. Thank you very much, everybody. That's it, I think, isn't it?